Welcome back to Working Towards Our Purpose. This is episode 49, and today's show we're going to talk about comparing yourself to others. But before we get into that, you're going to have our little check-in that we started doing last week. And I'm feeling a little sore, a little tired, because I did a half marathon yesterday. It's my first one. And I also was not able to do my run this morning, so maybe feeling a little off my routine, because normally I do a run before all these episodes. So went for a walk instead, and got my sore legs moving. Also feeling very supported. I think running a race, I haven't done many of them. I've done a couple 5Ks here and there. I did a 5K the end of last year, but this was my first marathon, my first race any bigger than a 5K. And just the amount of people that come out and support the runners was just sort of very encouraging, inspiring. My aunt and uncle were there, my girlfriend there to support me and cheer me on, which felt nice. I just noticed that I'm not really used to feeling supported or accepting supportedness. That's probably not a word. Accepting the support from others is something that's maybe hard for me. So that's something I got to think about a little bit more, and maybe a topic for another episode. But yeah, it was a cool experience. The most I had ever run before that was 10 miles. So a half marathon's 13.1. And yeah, I definitely felt the difference. It was definitely hard, but I was able to get through it and to not have to stop. And, I didn't hurt myself, which was a goal. I just wanted to finish the race. But yeah, I felt really good at the way that I ran. And, it kind of brought up this idea of comparison, because I think when I thought about when I did this 5K that was at the end of last year, I kind of had just got into running, and I didn't think 3 miles was a lot at the time. And I remember feeling really bad in the race. I got through the race and I was like, wow, that was a lot harder than I thought. That was weird. It was only 3 miles. And I started thinking about it. And I noticed that I'm not used to running alongside other people. So when you're running alongside other people versus being alone, you notice all these other paces, these different there's some people that are slower than you, there's people that are faster than you. And I think when I started, I remember when I started the 5K, I remember being angry that people were in my way, or probably angry that people were going faster than me. And I was just focusing so much on the people around me that I didn't focus on myself, and I didn't focus on what I was doing. So I ended up running the first mile way too fast, tiring myself out, and then just it being terrible to get through the rest of it. And that was only 3 miles. So I really learned that lesson kind of the hard way, that when you're in a race, you can't focus on the people around you. And that's kind of what comparison is you're looking at the people around you and you're comparing yourself to them. So yeah, it brought up the idea for this episode. And, this time around when I went to do the half marathon, I knew that it was going to be hard, and I knew that I definitely couldn't make that mistake again. So, there was even more people around me this time, but instead I kind of just focused on trying to focus on my pace and my breathing. So anytime I was noticing myself sort of getting distracted, I would just focus on my breath. And that served me really well, because I ran my first and even second mile pretty slow, but then I have my Nike app, and it tells me my pace every mile. And I noticed that my pace was getting better and better and better and better, up until the very end. And yeah, I was proud of myself for not making the same mistake, for focusing on myself. And I think that that's really what got me through to finishing it, because if I were to start focusing on others, I probably would have burnt myself out again and been in trouble, because man, 13 miles is a lot. And yeah, I mean, like I said, the most I ever ran before was 10, and adding another 3 on is you certainly feel it. And I also need to start training on hills, because I'm not used to running uphill, but again, I just use my breathing, and I think that was like such a helpful thing. I noticed like going uphill, it was obviously a lot harder, but when I focused on my breathing, I was able to just kind of keep going. And I guess that's another good example, because I noticed on hills, a lot of people would start slowing down, or they would just like kind of stop altogether. And if I looked too much at what other people were doing, I probably could have convinced myself like, oh, it's okay, you can stop too. But I was really kind of adamant about not wanting to stop. So I was able to get through that. And yeah, anyways, just feeling supported, and it's a nice feeling, and feeling proud of myself too. Another new feeling that I'm trying to get used to. So yeah, I think that's kind of the check-in, and then also kind of the start of the episode. Is just like talking about comparison. And yeah, so for today, I got like sort of 3 steps to sort of work through comparing yourself to others. I think the first thing, the first step, as in, I think a lot of these episodes, anytime you're trying to overcome something or change something, the first step is always recognize and like to see that you're doing it, because without that, you can't really know that you're doing it. You're kind of stuck in your head. So much like when I was doing that 5K and I was looking at all the people around me, I didn't really know that I was doing it at the time, but afterwards I was like, wow, that was terrible. What did I do wrong? And I recognized that like I was paying too much attention to the people around me. And so yeah, like where are you comparing yourself? Is there an area in your life that you're comparing yourself to others, making yourself feel bad, belittling yourself? Social media is the classic place that we all, well, I don't want to say we all, but I certainly struggle with comparing myself to. It's a place where people put a curated version of themselves up. You can look at other people's lives, compare yourself to people you don't even know. And I know that for me, that's a place where I fall into comparing myself to others. So, is there a place that has, I guess, maybe like low-hanging fruit where you can do something about it? With social media, for me, it's rather easy to go in and put like a timer on your social media. So I'm only allowing myself 20, 25 minutes a day, and then I get kicked out. Is there something you can do to sort of like limit your exposure? For me, that was social media. Other areas of your life where you can compare yourself to someone is perhaps your job, your work. Maybe you're comparing yourself to your boss or an employee, or maybe somebody that got a raise and you didn't, or if you're owning a business, maybe you're comparing yourself to your competition, to a friend who's got a business. Maybe you're comparing yourself to your spouse. I know people that have done that, who've compared themselves to their spouses and sort of started belittling themselves because they felt like they weren't doing enough. That's going to be a little bit harder, because obviously you're spending more time with that person. But is there anything like right off the bat, maybe you can sort of limit yourself? Maybe you have a friend group that makes you compare yourself in a negative way. You can maybe sort of limit yourself a little bit. But yeah, the first step is just kind of like recognizing where this exists. Like where does this problem exist? And then as soon as you recognize that you're doing it, then the second step, you can then try to stop doing that. And, that's easier said than done, to stop comparing yourself. But I think things like setting the social media timers can be a place where you can stop the comparison, right? If I'm only allowed 20 minutes, then I only allow myself 20 minutes to get on there and start comparing myself, I guess. But I think to try to help yourself stop, there's some like things and analogies that like I've been thinking about recently. So one of them is I used to really love NASCAR when I was a kid, and me and my brother like loved racing, loved NASCAR. And something that they would always say, like the announcers would say when somebody was leading a race, is that, if the guy who's leading is looking in his rearview mirror too much, then he's likely to, make a mistake and not hit his corners like he's supposed to. He'll start driving slower laps, and then before you know it, he's going to get passed. So a lot of times they would say stuff like, he's got to look out his front windshield more than he's looking in the mirror. And, I think that that's like a great analogy to think about, like comparing yourself. Like if you're driving a car and you're looking in the mirror all the time, you could easily crash into something. You're not paying attention to what you're doing because you're too focused on who's in the mirror. And, I think it's okay to every once in a while check your mirror, but if you're spending more time looking in your mirror than you are out the windshield, then that's a problem. And that's, I think, like a good analogy for thinking about comparing yourself to others. Another thing that I read recently in a book, can't remember where it was from, but it was saying something like, if you're sort of looking at other people and comparing yourself to somebody else, maybe you're trying, in comparison, you're trying to like be that person almost. You're trying to do what they're doing or go about something the way that they go about it. You're never going to like win. You're never going to be as good at doing it the way that they do it, because they're the only person who's, we're all unique, and they're the only person who is that person. That was confusing. Let me say it a different way. Let's go back to the NASCAR example. So Jeff Gordon was my favorite NASCAR driver, right? And if I'm like looking at Jeff Gordon and like I want to be a race car driver when I'm a kid, and I'm like, oh, I want to be Jeff Gordon, I want to be Jeff Gordon. There's no way that I can be him because he's the only Jeff Gordon that there is. So if I'm trying to be Jeff Gordon's definitely going to be better at being Jeff Gordon than I am. So to think about like, well, you're never going to be that person because everybody's unique, but you're going to be the only best version of you that you can be, or you're going to be the only best version of yourself. So instead of trying to focus on like how you can be like somebody else, focus on how you can be the best version of yourself, because nobody else can do the things that you can, because you have all these special traits and talents and gifts that if you focused on yourself, then you can let those shine instead of trying to be somebody else who maybe you admire. And, admiration is good, but if you're doing it in a negative way, then it becomes an issue. So yeah, just, it kind of goes into the topic we talked about a couple episodes ago about, like looking at a Guitar Hero and comparing yourself to it. If you're looking at it as a way of inspiration, then that's great. But if you're looking at it in a negative way, then it's not, and it's not helpful to you. So I think, to think about sort of, again, kind of like with the recognition, so with recognizing like where it's showing up, like if you're comparing yourself to somebody and it's not helpful, then that it's probably an issue. So, so what do you do? Well, if you're trying to stop this, I think step 3, changing your perspective, is what you can then replace it with. So instead of comparing yourself to somebody, change your perspective. And, like we said, like, are you spending more time in the rearview mirror than looking out the windshield? If you are, then, try to change your perspective, recognize you're looking in the rearview mirror a little too much and say, okay, well, maybe I can start looking out the windshield a little bit more. Maybe I can, instead of looking to the people around me, I can look towards myself. I could look inwardly and think about like, what can I do? And, the classic sort of example of instead of comparing yourself to others, you want to compare yourself to like previous versions of yourself. So instead of comparing yourself to others, you can compare yourself to an older version of yourself. And, that might sound like a little cliche, or maybe you've heard it too many times before. But I do really think that that's the best way to try to look at your own progress and to try to look at, how you can do better and beat your old self versus trying to like compete with somebody who's not you. For example, like, one of my goals this year was to run a marathon, but then I started having trouble with my foot, and my Achilles tendon was like kind of hurting and messed up and stuff. So then I kind of gave up the idea, and then I started feeling a little bit better. I started running more, and then I was like, all right, well, maybe I'll do a half marathon. And my brother is doing a full marathon, and I have some friends who are doing full marathons, and I could easily compare myself to them and be like, well, whatever, it's not even worth it. I'll just give up. I don't want to, if I can't do a full marathon, then it's not worth it. But instead of comparing myself to other people, I can look at myself and I could be like, man, 3 months ago, I could like hardly do 3 miles without my leg like really hurting. And now I can do 6, 7, 8. And, I've made progress. I can see my own progress. And then it gave me the confidence to be like, yeah, let's do a half marathon. Why not? Like, it's something. It's something to accomplish. It's not nothing to do a half marathon. So I signed up for it, and then I did it, and I felt good about it. I felt proud of myself, and yeah, comparing myself to myself, I was able to do that instead of like thinking about, well, my brother's doing this or my friend's doing this, so maybe I should just give up. And it's a lot easier said than done. So again, I think always as I talk about these topics in these episodes, it's always being kind to yourself. And I think that's the biggest thing, is when you're not comparing yourself to somebody else and you're comparing yourself to you, then you're being more kind with yourself. You're being more sort of appreciative of the things that you're doing versus looking at like somebody else and being like, oh man, I'm not good enough because I should be doing this, or I should be doing a full marathon. So how do you inject kindness into this too? I think that's certainly another aspect of trying to stop comparing yourself to others. So yeah, I think those are kind of the 3 or maybe 4 things. Is to first recognize that you're comparing yourself to others. Second is to find out how to stop doing that. And third is to replace the comparing yourself with changing your perspective. And then, maybe 4 is a little bonus, is to be kind to yourself. And I think inherently looking at what you've done in the past, you're already being like kinder to yourself because you're looking at the things that you've done instead of, what somebody else has. I think, kind of wrapping this episode up, I think the biggest thing for me was kind of realizing that there's a link between like comparing yourself and then also like looking at what other people are doing. So I think like, I don't know, for me, maybe this makes sense to you, maybe it doesn't, but for me, like when you say comparing yourself to others, it's just this term that like I've heard a million times, and like, I don't know, I kind of don't know what it means. I kind of do know what it means, but it can easily be said and like I don't feel anything. But if I say like, you're focusing on what other people are doing instead of focusing on what I'm doing, that like kind of deconstructs that comparison, because it's kind of saying the same thing. That is what comparison is, because when you're comparing yourself, you're focusing on other people. But when I break it down and think about like, oh, I'm looking at what somebody else is doing actively instead of thinking about what I'm doing. So of course I'm not going to be thinking about what I'm doing, because you really only have like one focus point, one center of attention. And if I'm using my attention to look at what somebody else is doing, I'm ignoring what I'm doing. So that for me was like sort of a nice little epiphany as I was running. I was like, oh, I get it now. Like, because I'm not looking at these other runners and I'm thinking about me and my breath, I can now focus on what it is I have to do. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what other people are doing. People are going to have opinions. People are going to have things to say, things not to say. And really focusing on what it is that you feel true to is, what's going to make you sort of feel good about what you're doing. And I think that was kind of a nice little insight that I think I had was that comparing yourself is spending your energy on other people, spending your energy looking at what other people are doing instead of spending that energy on yourself. that's the episode I got for you today, comparing yourself to others. So take a moment and, maybe think about where you're comparing yourself to others. Cause yeah, none of us are perfect. I think we all do this. I do this. I compare myself. So where are you doing it? And maybe we can, think about like, not doing it as much or focusing in on our own things instead of what somebody else is doing. So thanks for listening as always. If you're watching and listening to this on YouTube, please like and subscribe. I am trying to grow my YouTube channel, so that would be greatly appreciated. And I will see you on another episode real soon. Oh, and one more thing before I go. Now that I've gotten through this episode, I thought it was really funny that this is the second time for me recording this episode, because I already recorded the whole thing and I forgot to hit record on the video capturing system that I use. So I got to the end of the episode and I was like, I didn't record the video. And I was like, I felt good about it. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to do as good, a job as the first episode. And then I thought about it and I was like, what are you going to compare yourself to the first version that you did instead of the second version? And I was like, that's pretty funny since the topic is comparing yourself. So yeah, just thought I'd share that because I thought it was funny. But yeah, think about not comparing yourself. But yeah, anyways, so thanks for listening. And as always, I will see you on another episode real soon. Thanks.